All righty. This is not ESPN's 30 for 30, but it is my 98 for 98. 98 seasons of history of the New York Football Giants. I'm going to try to get it done in 98 days. Probably not going to. I'm trying to get it done before the beginning of the season, which starts September 10th. We're forging our way ahead. We're out of the 20s. We're out of the 30s. We're out of the 40s. We're even out of the 50s. We're forging into the 1960s with the 1960 NFL season, 1960 season of the New York Giants, which just happened to be the 36th season in history of the New York Giants. The Giants went to the last 3 out of the last 4 championships. They went to the 56, the 58, the 59. 1960, you would not be one of those years. They took a little step back. This was the Eagles' year. Everything really fell into place for the Philadelphia Eagles, and they wound up winning the championship. They won at Franklin Field. They won 17-13 over the Green Bay Packers. This was the only playoff loss in the history of Vince Lombardi. He took the Green Bay Packers, to 10 playoff / championship / games, and he was 9-1. This was the only loss. So the next 9 times he was in the playoffs, he would win. Unfortunately, this was, I don't know, whatever you want. Just a tough time. Just 1960 was just a tough time for the Giants. Lots of things just were not good. Obviously the Eagles won the championship. The Giants didn't. I'm going to go over a little bit. Frank Gifford got injured. He missed the whole 1961 season because of his injury. He came back in 1962. But this would be the last season in the head coaching career for Jim Lee Howell. Jim Lee Howell coached the Giants from 1954 to 1960. Did very good in those 7 years. He took the Giants to 3 championship games. The problem is that the Giants had to me, if you ask me, bar none, the Giants from 1954 to 58 had the greatest, assistant coaching duo. Like nowadays you got the head coach and you got the offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator. And, of course, now the offensive coordinator, there's 312 assistant offensive coordinators. And then you got a coaching, the quarterback coach, and there's 312 quarterback assistant coaches and all. Well, it wasn't like that back then. There was, the offensive coordinator, defense coordinator. There might have been a line coach, might have been a running back coach or something like that. But it wasn't that much. But, but it basically, bar none, for all eternity, forever, the Giants had the greatest from 54 to 58, those 5 seasons, the best duo of assistant coaches, Vince Lombardi and Tom Landry, bar none, for all eternity. I don't care, and the Giants had them both, and just let them go away. And then, of course, we replaced Jim Lee Howell in 1961 with Allie Sherman. Allie Sherman was an okay coach, not a good coach, not a phenomenal coach. Some people, he went to 3 championship games, 1961, 62, and 63. Well, he inherited that team. And after that, the team just went in the dumper. After 63, from 64 to 68, he got fired into the 69 season when we lost 300. When we lost, I think it was 37-14 to the Jets in the preseason. But anyway, after we lost the 63 championship game, we never had another winning season with Allie Sherman. We had the worst team in the history of the Giants with Allie Sherman, 1966. So he was not a good coach. We lost all 3 of those championship games that Allie Sherman was in, 61 to 60, 61, 62, 63. The Giants went to 3 championships with Allie Sherman as our new head coach from a team he inherited. The offense in those 3 games scored 1 touchdown. We scored a grand total of 17 points. One of the touchdowns was on a block punt. Evich Barnes blocked the punt, and Scott, linebacker, recovered in the end zone. 1962 championship game. And in 1963, 61, we got shut out 37-0. Just absolute total embarrassment. Absolute total unbelievable, horrible, disgusting, just disgusting. And we lost 37-0 to Vince Lombardi, the coach of the Green Bay Packers, who used to be the assistant coach, for the Giants. And we just let him go. But so unfortunately we lost Jim Lee Howell, who's a good coach, nothing super spectacular. But we lost it, and we brought in Ali Sherman, and that's basically that's bringing in Ali Sherman was kind of like that's when we went to 3 championship games. But from 1964 to 1980, those were the wilderness years, no playoffs. But anyway, the 1960 season, as I said, it finished up with the Green Bay Packers and the Philadelphia Eagles being in the championship game. As I keep saying, unfortunately, the Green Bay Packers were in the championship game, and their head coach was Vince Lombardi, who the Giants just let go away. And the thing is that Vince Lombardi took over a team. In 1958, the Green Bay Packers were 1-10-1. The very next season, with the same guys, they went 7-5. The very next season, so in 2 seasons, he took them from 1-10-1. In 2 seasons, he had them in the championship game. And the Packers should have won the championship game. Once again, everything's lined up perfectly for the Eagles. But anyway, unfortunately, the Giants, one thing was becoming apparent for the Giants. They needed quarterback play, and they just did not have it. They had Lee Gross Cup. Even have a hard time saying the guy's name. We also had Charlie Connolly, who had been with us since 1948. However, Charlie was 39 years old. He was getting old. He only started 7 games. George Shaw started the other 5. So, I mean, George Shaw was not really was not the answer. We had Lee Gross Cup, who was not the answer. And we had Charlie Connolly, who was 39. So we needed another quarterback. So thankfully, in 1961, we made a trade for Y.A. Tittle. Y.A. Tittle spent the final 4 years of his career with the Giants. He took us to 3 straight championship games. And in 1964, the Giants went 2-10-2, and his career was over. But I memean, our quarterback play was not exceptional this year. Also, our defense took a step backwards. We were giving up 14 points a game in 1959, but we gave up almost 22 points a game in 1960. A lot of that was also not so much the defense's fault. I mean, we gave up. We gave up an interception return for a touchdown, another interception return for a touchdown, fumble recovery for a touchdown, another fumble recovery for a touchdown, another fumble recovery for a touchdown. So, I mean, we gave up, just a lot of, this was not a good season for the Giants. Let's see here. Pat Summerall did a good job kicking extra points. Let's see here. What do we got here? I'm trying to see what he did. That doesn't show. Oh, field goals. Okay. He was 13 out of 26 on field goals. His field goals weren't on. But I mean, even back then, 50% was not bad. I mean, overall was not that bad. Let's see what we got here. The rushing was not really, what do we get? Our rushing. Yeah. That's passing. There's the rushing. We ran 3.5 yards. We got 3.5 yards of carry. We got 10 touchdowns. Nothing really spectacular. On 8 defense, we only gave up 8 rushing touchdowns. We only gave up 3.2 yards of carry. So our running defense wasn't bad. Our passing was just not. We gave up. We had 20 passing touchdowns. We had 23 interceptions. We only gave up 19 passing touchdowns, and we had and the defense got 22 interceptions. I mean, we were just very mediocre. We scored 22 points a game. We gave up 21, almost 22 points a game. So basically, we scored 271 points, gave up 261. So just very, very mediocre. It was the exact opposite because 1958 and 59, the 58, the defense gave up 15 points a game. 59, it gave up only 14 points a game. But you'll notice once we things are going to start changing a little bit here for the next 3 seasons after 1960. When we got Wyatt Till, we're going to start scoring some more points. So because Ali Sherman, he was more of a pass guy. When Vince Lombardi was like the offensive coordinator for the Giants in the mid-50s, he liked to run the ball. Well, Ali Sherman, he kind of seems like to pass the ball. So we got Y.A. Tittle in there, a real good quarterback, real good passing quarterback. And 2 of the seasons, he's going to throw for over 30 touchdown passes. So he's going to really, really do good. So things are going to change a little bit. So better times were ahead, but the Giants wind up finishing 6-4-2. I mean, unbelievable. The other thing that was really just an embarrassment, straight up embarrassment, was 1960. They played 12 games. The Dallas Cowboys were an expansion team. First year in the league, 1960. Well, their head coach was Tom Landry, who would take the Cowboys to 5 Super Bowls in the 1970s. Took them to 2 championship games in the 60s, 1966 and 1967. Took them to 5 Super Bowls in the 70s. An amazing coach, very amazing. But he was the Giants' defensive coordinator in the 50s, and we just let him go. I mean, it was a little more, it wasn't quite like that, but, if we really, really wanted to, I'm sure we probably could have kept him, and he could have been our coach, and Lord knows what he could have done with us. But anyway, but the real embarrassment of it was they played 12 games in 1960. The Dallas Cowboys did not win a game all season long. They were 0-11-1. Their one tie was against the Giants. And to make it even worse, the one tie against the Giants was in Yankee Stadium. The Giants were home, fighting for their playoff lives to win the to win the division and all this stuff and everything. And they gave up 30. They tied 31-31 to the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, just an absolute embarrassment. The problem is that Tom Landry was a fantastic coach, and he knew the Giants better than they knew themselves. He was on the Giants defensive coordinator in 1959, so he kind of knew how to attack the Giants defense, and they scored 31 points against the Giants. So just to tie the game up, the Cowboys averaged 14.8 points per game in 1960. 14.8 points per game. They scored 31 points on the road against the Giants. They scored twice as many points as they normally score on the road. I mean, that was the most points they scored all year. Well, it was on the road against the Giants in week 11. They were 0-10 coming into the game. And after they tied the Giants, they were 0-10-1. Unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. This was also this one is kind of the tie that the Giants had kind of pretty much wiped out their chances of winning the division as well too, because they needed to win that game and they didn't. So it was just overall a real bad season. As I said, Frank Gifford got injured in week 9 against the Philadelphia Eagles at home. Chuck Bednarik hit him up high. Frank Gifford fell backwards, hit his head, knocked him out. He missed the whole, due to his injuries, he missed the whole 1961 season. He came back in 1962. But when he came back in 62, he was a wide receiver or a flanker or an end, whatever you want to call him. He was not a running back anymore. So he finished his career in 1964. So 62, 63, and 64, Frank Gifford was whatever you want to call him. A wide receiver, a flank, or an end. He was not a running back anymore. So let's start this off in a 1960 NFL season. The 1960 NFL season was the 41st regular season in the history of the National Football League. 41st for the regular season for the NFL, 36 for the Giants. The Giants started in 1925. The NFL started in 1920, so the Giants are 5 years younger than the NFL is. Before the season, 33-year-old Pete Rozelle, the general manager of the Los Angeles Rams, was elected NFL commissioner as a compromise choice on the 23rd ballot. Meanwhile, the league expanded to 13 teams in late January with the addition of the Dallas Cowboys and their head coach, Tom Landry, who used to be with the Giants. And with the 14th team, the Minnesota Vikings coming in 1961. Also, the Cardinals relocated from Chicago to St. Louis. So in 1959, they were the Chicago Cardinals. 1960, they became the St. Louis Cardinals. Let's see. In the championship game, the host Philadelphia Eagles defeated the Green Bay Packers at Franklin Field 17-13. 2 years earlier in 58, both teams had finished in last place in their respective conferences. So within 2 years, they went from last place in each one of the conferences to the championship game. Let's see. This loss was Vince Lombardi's only postseason defeat as an NFL head coach. He was 9-1 in the postseason in his NFL career. Following this loss in 1960, Lombardi's Packers won 5 NFL championship games in 7 seasons and easily won the first 2 Super Bowls. The NFL introduced a playoff bowl, a game for third place between the 2 runners-up in each conference, played at the Orange Bowl in Miami, Florida after the NFL championship game. It benefited the players' pension fund. The Detroit Lions played the Cleveland Browns in the inaugural game, and the Lions won by a point, the first of 3 straight wins by Detroit in the series. The 2-time defending league champion Baltimore Colts led the Western Conference after their bye week in Week 9, but lost their last 4 games to finish at 500 and 4th in the West. Yeah, I mean, the Colts, they were really, really good in 58, 59, and they finished at 500 in 1960. They took a big step backwards. The New York Giants, winners of the Eastern Conference, the previous 2 seasons, won only one of their final 5. That was the problem. The Giants went 1-3-1 in their final 5 games and just took their chances out of the playoff, to win the division, or the conference, shall I say. During the season, the American Football League, the AFL, was launched as a competitor to the NFL. The 2 leagues coexisted for the entire 60s, agreed to a merger in 1966, and became one combined league in 1970. Also, because of the 13th team, there was 12 teams in 1959. With the emergence of the Dallas Cowboys, there were 13 teams now. So each team had a bye week. There you go, because of the Dallas Cowboys coming into the league. The draft. The 1960 NFL draft was held on November 30th, 1959 at Philadelphia's Warwick Hotel. With the first pick, the Los Angeles Rams selected running back Billy Cannon from Louisiana State University. Because the league awarded the Dallas Cowboys franchise about 2 months later on January 28th, this marked the only time that an NFL expansion team did not have the benefit of a college draft in its first year. Wow. Go figure, huh? So another one of the reasons why the Cowboys were 0-11-1. The 1960 NFL expansion draft was held on March 13, 1960, with the Dallas Cowboys selecting 36 players from the other 12 teams. That's where they got their players from. Let's see here. Conference races. All teams with Dallas played a home and away game against the other 5 members of their own conference, 1 interconference game, and 1 game against the new team, the Dallas Cowboys. Although assigned to the Western Conference, they were a swing team and played each team once. This was the final season for the 12-game schedule in the NFL, because once 1961 came around, they started playing 14 games when the Minnesota Vikings came. A bye was required because of there being just 13 teams, with 1 team having a bye in each of the 13 weeks. The Cowboys' first game saw them take a 14-0 lead over the Pittsburgh Steelers on a Saturday night at the Cotton Bowl, with Jim Dorn catching a pass from Eddie LeBaron for the first score, but they lost 35-28. So, let's see what we got here. The Green Bay Packers, they wound up winning. They were 8-4. The Detroit Lions and the San Francisco 49ers were in second place. They were both 7-5. The Eagles wound up winning. They were 10-2. And the Cleveland Browns were in second place. They were 8-3-1. And the Giants finished in third place at 6-4-2. Not very good. Not very good at all. Let's see here. What do we got here? Oh, the Pro Bowl. The Pro Bowl it played in Los Angeles Memorial Coliseum in Los Angeles, California on Sunday, January 15th. The West beat the East 35-31. Most valuable player was Norm Van Brocklin, the quarterback for the Philadelphia Eagles, and the coach of the year was Buck Shaw, Philadelphia. Coaching changes. Tom Landry became the expansion team's, the Cowboys' first coach. He went from the Giants to the Cowboys. Los Angeles Rams, Sid Gilman was replaced by Bob Waterfield. Stadium changes. The expansion Dallas Cowboys started to play their games in the Cotton Bowl. The relocated St. Louis Cardinals moved to Busch Stadium. All right, the draft, which was, as obviously was held on November 30th, 1959. Many players, including half of those drafted in the first round, signed with teams in the newly created American Football League, including the first overall pick and Heisman Trophy winner, Billy Cannon. At the time of the draft, the Cardinals were still the Chicago Cardinals. They moved to St. Louis in March of 1960. The Dallas Cowboys were enfranchised in January 1960 after the draft. So, I mean, there was 5 Hall of Famers taken, but I mean, out of these guys, Jim Otto wound up playing with the Raiders. He was a Hall of Famer. He was drafted, but he wound up signing with the Raiders. Ron Mix, he got selected by the Baltimore Colts. However, he wound up playing with the San Diego Chargers, or actually it was the Los Angeles Chargers in 1960. They became 1961. They became the San Diego Chargers, I believe. And the Giants did not have a very good draft. The first round in 1960, the Giants took Lou Cordileone, a defensive tackle from Clemson. Second round, the Giants didn't have a pick. Third round, this wound up being only 20 rounds. This is the first time in a long time. Usually it was 30 rounds. Now it was down to 20 rounds. Second round, the Giants did not have a pick. Third round, the Giants took Jim Leo, a defensive end from Cincinnati. Fourth round, the Giants didn't have a pick. Round 5, the Giants didn't have a pick. I'll just go over the top 10 rounds here. Round 6, the Giants took George Blairy back from Mississippi. Round 7, the Giants took Bob Yates, a tackle from Syracuse. Let me see. His name sounds familiar. Did he play? Nope. He signed Bob Yates. The Giants drafted him, but he wound up playing with the Boston Patriots for 6 seasons from 1960 to 1965. So Bob Yates played, but he didn't want to play with the Giants. Round 8, the Giants took Fred Hagman, a center from Kansas. Round 9, the Giants took Bob Anderson, a halfback from Army. And round 10, the Giants took Bob Sims, an end from Rutgers. I mean, not a good draft at all by any stretch of the imagination for the Giants. And I looked at the other 10 rounds. I mean, like, none of the guys, none of them really panned out at all for the Giants. I mean, maybe a guy played maybe a year here or there or something for the Giants, but it was not a good draft. The 1960 draft was not good for the Giants at all. Then we go to the Giants season here. This is where, they started off okay, and they were in the race, and then they as always, from 1925 to 1955, the Giants shared the Polo Grounds with the New York Baseball Giants. So the Giants always had anywhere from their first 2 to their first 4 games were on the road to make sure the baseball season was totally over with, including the regular season and possibly, I guess, the World Series, before the New York Football Giants would go into the stadium and start, I guess, playing and chewing the field up. So the Giants' first 3 games of the season were all on the road, and the Giants started off very well. They won all 3 of the games. They're 3-0. They're tied for first place. They went on the road. They played San Francisco. They won 21-19. Then second week of the season, Sunday, October 2nd, at St. Louis, they beat the Cardinals 35-14. Week 3, they played on Sunday, October 9th. They played in Pittsburgh. They played the Steelers. They won 19-17. So 3 games in, the Giants are 3-0. They would come home and play their first home game on Sunday, October 16th, against the Washington Redskins, and they would tie 24-24. The following week, at home, the St. Louis Cardinals would come and play the Giants, and the Cardinals would win 20-13. Now the Giants have a loss. Now the Giants are 3-1-1. So they played 2 games at home. They had a tie and a loss at home. Then they went on the road again, and they played the Cleveland Browns. And once again, as always, a very good team. And, of course, the Giants won. So the Giants were 4-0 on the road. They're 0-1-1 at home. The following week, they would come home on Sunday, November 13th, and they would play the Pittsburgh Steelers, and they would win 27-24. So now the Giants are 5-1-1. They're right there. They're. Let me see what the we got it for the Eagles here. So after 7 weeks, the Giants were 5-1-1. What did the Eagles wind up here? Okay, the Eagles were. Let's see, 1, 2. The Eagles were 6-1. All right. So, I mean, the Giants were like half a game out in first place. The Eagles didn't lose their second game till the second last game of the season. But, I mean, the Giants were right there, 5-1-1. So after 7 games, 5 games to go, the Giants were half a game out of first place. Then the problem is that their final 5 games, they only won 1 game. They lost 3 and they tied 1. And also the problem was they lost back-to-back games to the Eagles. On Sunday, November 20th, at home, they lost to the Eagles 17-10. This was the game that Chuck Bednarik hit Frank Gifford and knocked him like unconscious, knocked him out for the rest of the season. And due to his injuries, he knocked him the whole 61 season. Frank Gifford did not play. Well, the Giants lost 17-10. This was the back-to-back games they lost to the Eagles. There were also back-to-back games that the Eagles scored a touchdown on like a fumble recovery. This one, the game was tied at 10-10. In the fourth, the Giants were winning 10-0 in the game. The Eagles scored a touchdown pass in the third to make it 10-7. Then in the fourth quarter, the Eagles tied it up at 10-10. Then Jimmy Carr returned a fumble recovery. Jimmy Carr of the Eagles returned a fumble recovery, 38 yards for a touchdown. The Eagles didn't score, but it was a fumble recovery. They ran back for a touchdown, and that was the difference in the game. The Eagles won 17-10. So then the following week, the Giants go on the road to play the Eagles. Now the Giants are 5-2, 5-2-1. The Eagles are 7-1. The Giants are basically like a game or so. If the Giants could win this game right here, the Giants would be 6-2-1. The Eagles would be 7-2. The Giants are be like half game out, right there. But once again, everything fell in place for the Eagles. It was not meant to be. The Giants jumped out to a 17-0 first quarter lead. After the first quarter, they were up 17-0. Then the Eagles tied it up, and the Giants Pat Summerall kicked the field goal. So it was 20-17. The Giants were winning at the half. In the third quarter, the only score was a Pat Summerall 15-yard field goal. So now the Giants are up 23-17 going into the fourth quarter. And the Eagles scored 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter and wound up winning 31-23. But once again, the Eagles had a fumble recovery for a touchdown. So, but the Giants had a 17-0 lead and wound up losing 31-23. They got outscored. Was it 31-6 the rest of the game? But they had the lead, and So basically, now the Giants, after this, there's only 3 games left. They're 5-3-1, and the Eagles are 8-1. So the Giants have a slimmest chance. But the Giants have to win the rest of the games. The Eagles are going to have to lose a couple games, but it just was not meant to be. The back-to-back losses to the Eagles would just wipe them out. Then it was the following week. That's when the Dallas Cowboys came to play the Giants, and the Giants tied the Cowboys 31-31. The Giants were winning 31-24, and then the Cowboys scored with like a couple minutes to go in the game, I believe it was, to tie it up at 31, and that's the way it ended. And that ended the Giants season, because now the Giants after that game were 5-3-2. There were only 2 games left. The Eagles had like 8 or 9 wins, and the Giants season was over. The second last game on Sunday, December 11th, in Washington, the Giants won 17-3. So now the Giants are 6-3-2. Then the final game of the season, which didn't matter at all. I mean, the Giants came home and the Cleveland Browns beat them 48-34. So, meaningless game. The Giants got steamrolled, but so the Giants wound up 6-4-2. So it's just a disappointing season. But the thing is that they needed a quarterback, because Charlie Connolly was going to play one more season. 1961 was going to be his final season. Well, and that's he was going to be 40 years old. Right, 40 years old. That's very old. Giants had George Shaw and Lee Grosscup. They were not the answers. They needed somebody else. And in 1961, they would get Y.A. Tittle, and he was the solution to their problem in the regular season anyway. The postseason, it was just a different story. Giants couldn't score any points in the postseason at all. But it was just a tough overall season for the Giants. So when the championship game rolled around, 1960, the Eagles wound up winning that one 17-13. Now, once again, everything fell in line for the Eagles. The Packers outgained them. What was that? It has it right here. It's like 400. The Packers had like 400 yards of offense. The Eagles had 290 yards of offense. What was it? The Packers missed a 9-yard field goal attempt. 9 yards. Paul Hornung, it was kicked on a little bit of an angle, and Paul Hornung, kicked it, and he just missed 9 yards. 9-yard field goal, and he missed it. Earlier in the game, it was like right in the beginning of the game, the Packers had the ball, 4th down and 2, I think, at the Eagles' 5. They decided to go for it, and they got stopped short instead of kicking a field goal. There was another point, I believe it might have been in the third quarter. The Packers had the ball around the Eagles' 25-yard line in this championship game here. And, actually, they had the ball around the 30 or so, the Eagles' 30. They gave the ball to Paul Hornung. It was on 3rd down, I believe it was. And Paul Hornung ran. He got like 5 yards or so. He got down to the 25, but he's still 2 yards short. Well, he got injured on the play. He was their field goal kicker. I'm not sure if they had a backup field goal kicker, who it was or whatever. But so on the play, Paul Hornung got injured. So it was 4th down, like 2, once again, from the 25-yard line. So instead of kicking a field goal, they may not have been able to kick a field goal because he got injured on the play. He took him a little while to get up. He walked off the field under his own power, but he was their field goal kicker. I said, I don't know if they had a backup guy or not, but he was their field goal kicker. He's on the sideline shaking up. So they're at the 25-yard line of the Eagles. They could try a 32-yard field goal, which was makeable back then. But their field goal kicker's shaking up on the sideline. So on 4th down and 2, they decide to go for it. Jim Taylor gets stonewalled. He only picks up a yard. Gets down to the 24, 1st down, 1st and 10 for the Eagles going the other way. Packers missed out on another chance. They had, then they had the ball at the end of the game. I think they had the ball around the clock was running. They had no timeouts left. There was 15, 20 seconds to go in the game. They're down by 4 points. They're down 17-13. They have to score a touchdown. So, this just goes to show you the way things are between nowadays and back then. Bart Starr, Hall of Fame quarterback, drops back to pass. They have no timeouts left. If the ball gets completed in the field of play and a guy gets tackled the game's over. They have no timeouts. They can't run up and clock the ball. None of that. If they throw, so if you're at the 25, maybe you take a couple shots into the end zone, or you throw a ball. Maybe the guy runs out of bounds, stops the clock, or whatever. No, he dumps the ball off maybe around the 15-yard line to Jim Taylor, who's in the middle of the field. Now, mind you, if he gets tackled, the game's over. And what happens? He gets tackled. He gets down around the 9-yard line. Chuck Bednarik has got him around like around is like his head. He's tackling. Somebody else comes in. So they tackle Jim Taylor around the 9-yard line. Chuck Bednarik's on top of him. Chuck Bednarik's looking down at Jim Taylor. He's looking up at the clock. He's looking down at Jim Taylor, looking up at the clock. And he goes, you can get up now, Jimmy. This bleeping, the word starts with F. He said, this bleeping game is over. You can get up now, Jimmy. When I said the word starts with F, okay, this bleeping game is over. He gets up. He starts dancing around and stuff like that. They tackled him. The clock runs out. I mean, why you would dump a pass off to a fullback in the middle of the field, and he's got to basically plow his way into the end zone, which was really not going to happen. I mean, why you don't throw sideline patterns or throw something in the end zone? But anyway, so the Packers season ended at the 9-yard line. They were moving. If they had like another minute, they might have scored a touchdown and won the game. Or if they only needed a field goal, they could possibly kick the field goal to win the game. But once again, everything lined up for the Eagles, and they won. They won. But, I mean, the Packers were the better team that day. They just did not capitalize on opportunities that they had, and the Eagles did. So the Packers wound up winning 17-13. And I'm sorry, the Eagles won 17-13. This would be the Packers' first and only loss under Vince Lombardi in the playoffs. So the Packers would return to the playoffs championship games in 1961. The Eagles would go from 1960 to 1980 before they would reach another championship game. They made the 1980 NFC Championship game. They won that, and they went to the Super Bowl, and they got blown out by the Raiders. But I mean, it was like a flash in the pan for the Eagles. They everything lined up just perfectly for them this one season. They won the conference. They won the championship. They won, and then they just kind of went away because they were not a great team. But I mean, the Packers were building something with Vince Lombardi, and the Packers would be back in the championship. They would win in 61. Packers would win in 62. They would win in 65. They would win the NFL championship game in 66 and 67. They would win Super Bowl I in 66. They would win Super Bowl II after 67. So Packers were building something. The Eagles were not. The Eagles just got everything lined up perfectly for them. They had some very talented players. They had some Hall of Fame players on the team. Tommy McDonald, Chuck Bednarik, Norm Van Brocklin. So I mean, had some good players on the team without question. But everything is lined up perfectly for the Eagles. And I said, but the Packers would be back, and the Packers and the Giants would be in the next two championship games. Unfortunately for the Giants would only score 7 points in those next two championship games, and the only 7 points the Giants were scoring those next two championship games was because of a block punt, which was recovered in the end zone. So, but I mean, 1960 was not. I mean, they didn't have a losing season, but it was evident they needed better quarterback play. That was coming in 1961. In 1961, 62, and 63, the Giants would go to 3 consecutive championship games. Unfortunately, they would fall short in all 3 of them, as they did in many championship games. But that pretty much wraps up the 1960. It was just kind of a tough. I mean, Frank Gifford gets injured. He misses the whole next season. The Cowboys only have 1 tie all year. Of course, it's against the Giants in New York. The Giants' 2 coaches, 2 assistant coaches, Tom Landry. Now he's with the Cowboys. And the Cowboys would be on to bigger and better things as the 60s would go along. And then, of course, they had Vince Lombardi, who's now taking the Packers to many championship games. He would take the Packers to 3 straight championship games, 60, 61, and 62. And a lot of historians seem to think, and I wouldn't disagree with it. I wouldn't disagree at all. A lot of historians think that possibly the 1962 Green Bay Packer team that went 13-1 was the best team in the history of NFL. And I may not disagree with that at all. They were a very, very good team. But I said 1960 was just kind of a gut punch. And as I said, it would end Jim Lee Howell. It would end his coaching. He retired after the season. And the Giants would have Ali Sherman. He would be the coach of the New York Football Giants from 1961 to 1968. So it's 1960 was not, it was just a gut punch, just tough year for the Giants. But better times were ahead. 1961, 62, and 63, the Giants would go to 3 straight championships. Well, that pretty much wraps up the 1960 season. I will be back again tomorrow with the 1961 season for the New York Giants, which just happened to be the 37th season in the history of the New York Giants. I'll see you then.